To me, Global Reach Out is inspiring.
It's connecting with God, reaching out to the world, and impacting life.
The stories that shared is so personal and it deeply impacted me.
Global Reach Out to me is reach out to the truth.
Connecting hearts, connecting lives. You're listening to Global Reach Out.
To me, Global Reach Out is inspiring.
It's connecting with God, reaching out to the world, and impacting life.
The stories that shared is so personal and it deeply impacted me.
Global Reach Out to me is reach out to the truth.
Connecting hearts, connecting lives. You're listening to Global Reach Out.
Hello friends, a very warm welcome to Global Reach Out. And thank you for staying with us on this series, Oasis of God's Grace.
Episode 15. Hebrews chapter 11 is commonly known as the Hall of Fame of biblical characters with faith in God. The common refrain we hear is, by faith, ordinary people did extraordinary things. When we read Hebrews 11, we get excited, don't we? We are told that for some of these people, the world was not worthy of them. Yet several who were listed as men and women of faith did fail God. For example, Abraham, Jacob, Moses, Samson, Jephthah, and women of faith did fail God. All right? But God did not cast them away. Hence, God can use anyone who repents, including drug addicts, adulterers, murderers, liars, alcoholics, misfits, and prostitutes. Regardless of what you have done, God has a place for you. If we eliminate all who have failed, the Bible would be a very, very thin book. Let me illustrate further by giving 3 biblical examples and 2 contemporary stories. Judah. In Matthew chapter 1 verses 1 to 3, we are told that Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah. His life was a sordid tale. In spite of what he had done, God used him. God specializes in changing people. The genealogy did not mention his legitimate son Shelah, but mentioned Perez, born out of incest. Today, we talk of the Lion of Judah. From a disgrace, he became grace and great. As Simbala brightly points out, we are drifting away from New Testament message of God's amazing grace to change and redeem soiled people. Instead, we are moralizing and expressing self-righteous disdain over the horrible lives of others who are living around us. Peter. We know the character of Peter well. He speaks without thinking. He is also a braggart. He brags to the disciples about allegiance to Christ, only to deny him at the critical moment. Peter failed Christ by denying him thrice. From a human perspective, he is a failure. Yet we are surprised to read in Mark 16:7, but go and say to the disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you in Galilee. There you will see him as he told you. That is a great verse which tells us that although Peter failed Christ by denying him, he was given a second chance. If I were Peter, I would have greatly encouraged and uplifted. What a motivation for Peter to start all over again. Also in John 21, we are told Jesus gave Peter 3 chances to affirm his love for him. He did. Perhaps this explains why he becomes totally sold out to Christ's lordship because of his experience of grace. That same Peter who denied Christ later wrote the 1st and 2nd epistle of Peter, where the word grace is mentioned at least 9 times. That coward Peter became a firebrand for God in preaching on the day of Pentecost. He had experienced grace of the gospel firsthand in his encounter with Christ. Tradition has it that he asked to be crucified upside down because he felt unworthy to be crucified upright like Christ. Mark, another example. Paul and Barnabas took Mark as an intern in their first missionary trip. However, along the way in Pamphylia, Mark deserted them. Scholars suggest Mark deserted the team because he was homesick, he was ill. Some suggested cowardly, unable to endure hardship. So on a second missionary journey, Paul insisted Mark should be left out. He did not believe Mark deserved a second chance. Barnabas, whose name means son of encouragement, however, thought otherwise. He believed Mark needed a second chance. As a result, a sharp dispute arose which split their missionary partnership. Paul took Silas while Barnabas took Mark and set sail for Cyprus. Fortunately, the story did not end there. Because Barnabas was willing to exercise grace on Mark and gave him a second chance, we have the Gospel of Mark, which was written by the very same person who deserted Paul and Barnabas. Without Barnabas, there will be no Gospel of Mark to give us the splendid portrayal of the servanthood of Christ. Reading his Gospel is exciting because it is characterized by the word immediately. What is interesting is that Paul later changed his opinion about Mark. When Paul was in prison, surprisingly, he asked for Mark. He told Timothy, "Get hold of Mark and bring him with you. He was a great help to me." Of all the people he could have seen, he asked specifically for Mark, who deserted and disappointed him. Thank God for Barnabas, who are always willing to give second chances to people who are called Mark. A second chance for them to redeem themselves and for believing in them. We need more people like Barnabas in our churches. Story. At the height of a promising career in ministry, God called a brother whom I call X into the ministry. To prepare his ministry, he went to study at Regent College in Vancouver, Canada. The Lord blessed his ministry and he pastored one of the fastest, largest growing churches in Malaysia. As a successful pastor and riding on the crest of his popularity, he became much sought after speaker, locally, regionally, and internationally. However, his entire world collapsed when his beloved wife died from cancer, leaving behind 2 sons. His second marriage ended in divorce. When that happened, churches cancelled his preaching and teaching engagements. His friends either condemned him or shunned him. Rumors were rife about him. He lost everything, including his beloved church. Not surprisingly, he became depressed. He felt suicidal and contemplated quitting the ministry. He oscillated between moods of shame and bitterness. He was angry towards those who failed to show compassion and sympathy when he needed them most. During his heyday, many churches welcomed him, but now, one by one, shut the doors. He felt used and struggled with feelings of rejection and dejection. Predictably, many churches and friends took upon themselves the prophet's mantle and pronounced about his ministry that it is finished, or rather, you are finished. During such difficult times, he recovered the true meaning of grace that sustained him. Genuine friends and mentors persevered in encouraging him. A loving and caring church embraced him and restored him to ministry. During this dark night of the soul, he began to know who God really was. He saw the importance of having mentors and genuine friends. Today, Brother X is restored into significant ministry. God has opened different doors and opportunity for him to minister to people from all walks of life. Indeed, failure need not be final because God and not humans have the last say. Now let's come to another story from Singapore. When God called him to the ministry, Brother A enrolled at the Malaysia Baptist Theological Seminary in Penang. His leadership skills were recognized by both professors and his peers. Upon graduation, he pastored a Baptist church in Singapore. Under his dynamic and caring leadership, the church grew by leaps and bounds, and he became the leading church in convention. He became a very successful pastor and was in great demand. One day, he had an encounter with the Holy Spirit, which transformed his ministry. Unfortunately, the church was not ready to accept his teaching on the Holy Spirit. As a man of vision, he was ahead of his time. In order not to cause division, he resigned from the church. He started a new church but soon resigned. His whole world tumbled down and life went downhill. It lasted 18 years. He was bitter and angry with God because he felt that he did not deserve such treatment. After all, he had been serving God faithfully and had given his best to the people. He felt God abandoned him. His spiritual life and family life suffered greatly. He became a bruised, broken, and devastated man. From a spiritual giant, he was reduced to a dwarf. There were times when he did nothing but stare blankly at the wall. He lost his zest for his life and ministry. He refused to meet visitors in his home. In his despair, he blamed God and boxed with him. He vowed he would never return to the ministry. However, he had friends who refused to give up on him, although he had given up on himself. His brother and a pastor befriended him. They included him in their weekly recreation. His best friends brought him regularly to Port Dickson, Malaysia to fish and to recuperate. Being with friends at Port Dickson was very therapeutic for him. Once, when the group was praying, he broke down and wept uncontrollably over the hurt, pain, bitterness, and anger he had against God. Slowly but surely, God began to rework in his life to restore him. Today, he is back in the ministry. He responds to opportunity to preach, visit, fetch, and counsel the elderly. Lives are touched by his testimony and his ministry again. Failure need not be final because God allows us to do U-turn.
We will close here today. Please stay tuned with Global Reach Out, and let's meet again next week. Goodbye.
The program is proudly presented by Global Reach Out. We welcome you to share our live enriching webcasts with family and friends through our website, global-reachout.org. Let's reach out to bless more lives together. The program is proudly presented by Global Reach Out. We welcome you to share our live enriching webcasts with family and friends through our website, global-reachout.org. Let's reach out to bless more lives together.